Hello and welcome to our Friday reading. Today is September 11th, so I'd like to acknowledge the anniversary of the attack on the towers in New York and all the lives that were devastated that day. The story I'm going to read from today actually has a fair bit of it that takes place in New York City. I'd love to have been able to make a visit there. I mean, I stopped at the airport, but that's about the extent of my stop there. I studied it a lot via Google Earth, but anyway, this book is called Torn Canvas, and it's kind of a different way that I chose to tell the story. It's the second book in the Safe Harbors book. So if you have listened to the reading from A Change of Plans, you'll recognize Yuri as one of the characters from that book. A Change of Plans spans about 2.5 years. And Torn Canvas runs parallel to it. It starts probably about 75 pages in and takes you a little bit beyond, time-wise, the end of A Change of Plans. About Yuri, originally, I added him for a specific purpose, and when I realized it wasn't working for that, I thought perhaps I should write him out. But you know, Yuri is so broken. I love this guy. He has gone through a lot of bad stuff in his life, and it's impacted him. He's made some really bad choices because of it. He's not in a good place when Lynn and Elle befriend him on the ship, but they change his life. And so this is very much his journey. So obviously, not only did I not write him out, I gave him his own book. But anyway, I'm going to read to you from the prologue of the book. It's not super long. And you'll have met Olivia in the, if you've read A Change of Plans. So, prologue. Olivia leaned against the corner of the office wall, her forehead pressed against the window. She had to get a grip before the meeting with the general manager. The view of the Manhattan buildings from her office, so different from anything she had experienced as a child, usually soothed her. Far below, the light changed, and the crowd that had gathered at the corner crossed the street. People scurrying along in their busy lives, real people with real problems. Certainly not the kinds of problems Olivia had been facing lately. In the beginning, she had thought giving up a normal life to be at the top of her field worth the sacrifice. Now she wasn't so sure. Her new celebrity status was actually getting in the way of her doing her job the way she wanted to. Even a simple visit to the grocery store meant camouflage, unless she wanted a 15-minute excursion to turn into a 2-hour autographing session. How was she supposed to connect with people who were starstruck? People recognizing her in public, an email stalker, sending threatening messages, and no personal life. Not what she had imagined, and not anything the network manager cared about. Closing her eyes, Olivia relaxed her fingers and took a deep breath. She straightened, smoothed her skirt, and returned to her desk. Spread out on it were the photos of 6 up-and-coming models, 3 men and 3 women. Frivolous lightweights, if her staff's research was to be believed. Olivia took another calming breath and picked up one of the photos. Was she being unfair, judgmental? The man was definitely hot, and his blonde, almost white hair and light gray eyes. Add his nicely sculpted body, and he was the most physically attractive of the group of beautiful models. His reputation was also the worst of them all. From the report, a man who used his looks to take advantage of women. Despicable. Beauty with no substance. How cliché. And they wanted her to interview the lot. Gag. Then why did she keep coming back to his picture? Olivia tilted the photo for better light and leaned in for a closer look. There was something more behind his smiling face. Something in his eyes. It teased her. Made her think there was more to him than the stories of his escapades. That something was the story Olivia wanted to do. She was sure of it. The general manager kept insisting on more trending stories, more sensational topics. Why? He'd known the kinds of stories Olivia did when he had offered her the contract last year. Surrendering now to his brain fluff would turn her show into just another trash tabloid talk show like a dozen others. Shows that catered to some of the worst aspects of human nature. Selfishness, envy, greed, domination. Olivia shuddered. She would walk away from her contract first. Give me something, please. A groan rose from her chest. Rather than crush the picture, she dropped it. An older woman popped her head in the door. Did you call, Miss Howard? No. Olivia dropped into her chair. How would her entire career come to rest on this pathetic group? Miss Howard, Jose's here. I know you've got a meeting in 15 minutes. Send him in. His job title might be fact-checker, but his experience as a private investigator had made him much more. This might be just what she needed. The wiry Hispanic man tipped his head, brushing aside a strand of graying hair. At his grin, her pulse quickened. He had something for her. Please let it be about one of the models. Olivia's eyes flicked to the blonde man's picture. Let her instincts about him be right. What have you got? She asked. I think you're going to like this. Just tell me. That man had an aggravating tendency to tease, especially when it was information he knew Olivia wanted. Jose set a neat folder in front of her and took a seat in the chair on the other side of the desk. Olivia opened the file and hesitated at the newspaper headline. Some kind of accident? She glanced up. Just read on, Miss Howard. I've got something else for you before you're done. Olivia checked her watch. 10 minutes until her meeting. She began skimming the page. Driver fell asleep, crashed her car into train barriers, car stuck on tracks, driver crawled out broken window. Olivia straightened. A set of twins had been trapped in the car seats in the back. Look at these before you read any further. Jose placed a stack of printed papers on her desk, keeping one back. Jose, I'm running out of time. He pointed at the pictures. If he wasn't so good at what he did. Olivia quickly shifted the grainy photos that showed a man trying to open the car's doors. She vaguely remembered the story from late last summer. In spite of the approaching train, the stranger had crawled into the car and pulled out the children one at a time. The mother had reported that he and one of her children had almost been struck by flying debris as the train hit the car. The man had checked the child in his arms, made sure the mother and other child were fine, and jogged away. This is my kind of story. Olivia shook her head, her frustration increasing. But there's no one to interview. And I'd also like to know what that idiot with the camera was doing, taking pictures instead of helping. She stood, her heart sick. I have to go. Maybe you too have an interview. Grinning, Jose handed her a final picture. Her hands shook a little as she stared at the photo of a man with pale blonde hair, holding a child and looking over his shoulder. She picked up the model shot. It was him. Why didn't this come out before? My source wouldn't say. My guess is that when he showed it to other people, they asked the same thing you did. Jose shrugged. By the way, I already called this Jori Virtanen's agency. Yuri? She checked the name at the bottom of the picture. again. He's Finnish, so it's a soft J, not a cool Spanish H like mine. Virtanen's on a long cruise, won't be back for a few weeks. Perfect. This would give Olivia an excuse to put off the fluff show while she did research about this unlikely hero. To the network, it was all about ratings. She straightened her suit and, with a hint of a smile, headed to her meeting with the general manager. And I just have to share the beginning of chapter 1. Yuri was getting really tired of people pointing guns at him. And I just have to leave you there. Have a great weekend.